Hi, and welcome to Mother's Quest, a podcast for moms like me ready to live our own truly epic life. I'm Julie Neal, a life and leadership coach, community builder, writer, and mom to two high-energy boys who challenge me to grow into my best self. I'll be right there. Where was I? Hello, and welcome to a very different episode on the Mother's Quest podcast. Michael Skolnick, who is a political activist and friend of mine, has been sharing a series of posts on Instagram that call me to action every time I see them. The last one I saw a few days ago said this: "The election is not 30 days away. The election is over in 30 days. The election is now. Vote early." Like so many of you, I've been asking myself, if I understand that the election is now, what can I be doing to impact the election now? One thing I know I have is this platform and the Mother's Quest community. So I'm committed to sharing a series of episodes to shine light on the importance of this election and what we could do about it. Last week, I released a conversation I hope you'll tune into with Paola Mendoza and Sher about their powerful new book, Sanctuary, and the impact of this election on undocumented immigrants and asylum seekers. In this episode, with the permission of How Women Leads Julie Abrams, I'm honored to share a powerful conversation I heard live this week featuring Emerge, Women Donors Network, and UCSF's Dr. Gretchen Sisson and She the People's Amy Allison. They both share their strategic advice for where our political giving can have the most impact right now. Unfortunately, the recording didn't begin until a few minutes in, so you'll have to jump right in midstream. Be sure to connect to the link with the slides in the show notes, which will help you make sense of Gretchen's fast, furious, and in-depth presentation. After listening, I hope you'll consider joining me in making a political contribution, informed by Gretchen and Amy's analysis, and consider paying this episode forward to another woman in your network. In How Women Leads words, this year marks the centennial of women's right to vote. We must take action to elect leadership we can proudly call our own, who understand the issues we face daily and design policies that ensure our rights. I hope this conversation helps us all do this together. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest.
Governor, he should be winning by more than he is. He is not my favorite candidate. That being said, he does need money. He could probably pull this out if he has a little bit more money. So if that's what, some of this is personal, and I'm not going to prevent myself from editorializing because this is politics. But, if you have a connection to Montana, you like Steve Bullock, go for it. That race is winnable and he needs some funds. Then we get into Georgia. There's two races in Georgia. Jon Ossoff, the first race is like the regular Senate race. Primary, Jon Ossoff won. He's going up against Perdue. He's polling a few points down to even, really, really close. There will be a runoff there if neither gets 50%. And then the second Georgia race is an open seat. So it's what they call a jungle election. No primary. Every Democrat's on the list. Every Republican's on the list. It's a mess. The DSCC, so the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, has endorsed Raphael Warnock. He's the Reverend at Ebenezer Baptist Church. He's a great candidate. The concern here with this race is that the top two go to the runoff. Kelly Loeffler is currently appointed to this seat. She's sitting in this seat. She's running again. She's not a super popular sitting senator. She's being challenged by Doug Collins. Right now, Warnock, Loeffler, and Collins are really neck and neck in this race. There is a risk that Loeffler and Collins are the top two vote getters, and we have a Republican runoff. So we really need to prevent that from happening and get Reverend Warnock in there. And then at the toss-up, it's a little hard to judge. Jamie Harrison in South Carolina. Everyone loves Jamie Harrison. I love Jamie Harrison. He did fantastically in the debate the other night. Everyone hates Lindsey Graham. Jamie Harrison's polling is really close. I'm a little skeptical that he's going to quite pull it out because of how solidly Trump is still polling in South Carolina. So I would kind of put it towards the bottom of this list. The other reason is that, like Mark Kelly, like Amy McGrath, who we'll talk about in a minute, Jamie Harrison has been a fundraising powerhouse. He has brought in so much money. Part of that is because he's an outstanding candidate and fundraiser. Part of that is because Lindsey Graham sucks, right? And so the bottom line is Jamie Harrison is pretty solidly funded. So on this list, Greenfield, Bullock, Ossoff, Warnock, that's where you should be prioritizing your Senate money. You could also consider, and I put in the plug here, the New Georgia Project. I know we're going to be talking about Fair Fight later, and that's excellent. New Georgia Project was the organization that Stacey Abrams founded before her gubernatorial run to do a lot of voter engagement and advocacy on the ground in Georgia. She's no longer the director there, obviously, because she's at Fair Fight and running the world in other ways, but they still do outstanding work. And if you want to make an investment other than to the candidates to like sort of drive the benefit for both Ossoff and Warnock, that's a place to consider as well.
And is the New Georgia Project a nonprofit or is it a for-profit effort?
It's a nonprofit.
C4. It's a nonprofit.
It's actually a C. I think that they have a C4, but they also have a C3.
Right.
And I think Fair Fight is only C4 in PAC. So if you want to move C3 dollars in Georgia, I would go New Georgia Project.
Okay. And you guys know the difference, right? One is tax deductible nonprofit donation and the other one is not tax deductible.
And then these ones that I call the bargains, because they're only like a couple $1 million races as opposed to like tens of millions of dollar races like we're looking at for some Senate seats. Barbara Bollier in Kansas, she's like about a point down. She's running like Teresa Greenfield, running a really smart campaign in Kansas. She's a physician. She was a Republican state senator for a while. She switched parties when the Republican Party went totally off the rails. She's a moderate, but she's really reasonable, very compassionate, running a really smart campaign there. Same with Al Gross in Alaska. He's actually running as an independent, but he's been endorsed by the DSCC. He's pulling a little bit further down, but he's about even. And the thing is, just in Kansas and Alaska, your money goes really far. The media market is not that expensive. In Alaska, there's only 500,000 voters, right? Like, you know, this is bang for your buck. If you got $100 or $250 and you really want to feel like you can move the needle, like I would look at Kansas and Alaska. And I put Alabama on here too, because I really like Doug Jones. I think he's a smart campaign. I think he builds smart coalitions in Alabama. He was really buoyed by a lot of support and organizing from women of color in Alabama last time. They're coming out for him again. He's not polling that great. I think that he's really got an uphill battle, but he's worth considering supporting. He's been a good, solid Democratic senator from a very vulnerable position the entire time he's been in the Senate, and worth considering if you want to support the organizing that's happening there. So that's the Senate. Well, sorry, one more slide. Still not quite done. So the longer shots. So we've got MJ Hager in Texas. MJ's down a good bit, about 10 points. She's been about 7 to 8 points in more recent weeks, but Biden is keeping it close in Texas. He's only a point or two down. I don't think she's going to lose by that much. I don't know that Biden can win Texas, but I know that people in Texas are doing everything they can to try, and she's going to get buoyed by those efforts too. She needs money. In Kentucky, Amy McGrath, 15 to 7 points down. She has all of the money in the world. She's probably still going to lose. And everyone loves to fund her. Again, it's the same as with Jamie Harrison and Lindsey Graham. She's great. She's really compelling. She's very telegenic. She's very smart. Mitch McConnell is a traitor. But I promise you, she doesn't need your money right now. And she still remains a pretty big long shot. In Louisiana, we have Adrian Perkins. He's the 35-year-old mayor of Shreveport. He graduated from West Point from Harvard Law School, Louisiana native. There's not a lot of polling in this race. Biden is down a good bit in Louisiana. All Adrian needs to do is prevent Cassidy from breaking 50%, and that goes to a runoff. And that means that if we don't get the seats that we need in November, we have a chance to go back in December and see what we can do in Louisiana. And then the race that everyone's been asking about is Mike Espy in Mississippi. Espy has been down in polls like 10 to 28 points. And then a poll came out last week that had him down by 1. I don't really know what to do with that information. I don't think this is a 1-point race. I think Espy is more down than that. Biden is going to pretty solidly lose Mississippi. Mike Espy is a great candidate, but I have questions about that poll. I don't think it's really a 1-point race. But that being said, you've got 2 women fighter pilots on this page. You've got 2 Black men here in really tough races in the Deep South. If this is what you're passionate about, is building a reflective democracy, sending women and sending people of color and sending, like these can be your candidates. I want you to feel like, I want you to find, like, part of this is numbers, part of this is science, but part of it is also like what candidates are exciting you and like how can you work to build more momentum in some of these states that might be tougher. But, 10 years ago, no one would have thought we'd be talking here with Texas as an electoral college swing state. And part of that is because people have made investments in Texas when it was much more of a longer shot. So I think Louisiana could be there in another 10 years. Anyway, that's the big picture of the Senate. Quickly moving into state legislatures. So what state chambers are flippable? A couple of them. I picked these 5 because not only are they closely flippable, but these are states that have an outsized impact on national politics because they'll have redistricting issues. So the Arizona State House is within 2 points. The Senate is within 2 seats. The Senate is within 3 seats. North Carolina, the House is within 5 seats. The Senate is within 6. The Senate's going to be tough there, but I think we can do the House. Florida, the House is within 13 seats, which seems like a pretty high number, but there are 30 that are probably up for grabs that are close enough. Pennsylvania, the House needs 9, the Senate needs 4. I think we can do the Senate there. And Texas, the House needs 9. The reason these states are so important, I like to give this example. In North Carolina, there are as many registered Democrats as there are registered Republicans. And their congressional delegation is, I think, 10 Republicans and 3 Democrats because they have crap districts. The only way you get better districts out of North Carolina is through a lawsuit, which we had last time. But the only way we're going to get it next time is through a state house. We have a great governor in North Carolina. He's running for re-election. He looks pretty good. But he needs a chamber behind him to draw a good map. And then all of a sudden, it becomes that much easier to hold on to a majority in the US Congress. With regards to this, Texas is the mother lode. If Texas had fair districts, the entire composition of the US Congress could be different. And Texas is set to pick up probably 3 more congressional seats after this census. If we can get good districts in Texas, it's going to be a game changer. There are people doing a lot of work to get those 9 seats. We need 9 seats. There are 9 seats in districts that Beto won last cycle that have Republican sitting House members there. So we are going for them and others pretty strong. I have a lot of high hopes for the Texas State House. This slide is a mess. I'm sorry. There's a lot of information here. I just wanted to say that if you want to go and you're like, I want to give to every woman running for a Texas House seat that's competitive, I have a slate for you. I'm happy to send you that. I'm also happy to send you like these lists of organizations that are, almost all of these organizations are led by people of color. Most of them are led by women of color. I think one of the Pennsylvania ones is a white dude. They get through sometimes. The only traditional political organization on here is the Texas House Democratic Campaign Committee. I included them because I think they're actually doing really, really good work to get that state house back. But the rest of these are really good grassroots efforts. And again, these are places where your money will go really far to making these state legislature changes. And then up in the top corner, forward majority. If you're looking to make like a bigger gift or want to explore this long-term, forward majority does exactly what I'm talking about. What state houses do we need to flip to impact our national politics in a really big way? Super smart about it, very data-driven. And the Movement Voter Project is great because it's a little bit like a one-stop shop. You can go and you'd be like, I want to fund grassroots organizations in Arizona. And they're like, here are 6 of them. And you can just make your gift all at once. They'll send it to who needs it. Their website is a great tool if you want to do that and move money really quickly. Since we're getting close, we're getting just 28 days out. Okay, thanks. The Electoral College. This is the most recent solid electoral map that I could find. And you could see that here, the states that we talk about as swing states a lot, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, like Biden is pretty solid there. And our swing states right now are really North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Florida. These are the new American majority states. These states are becoming swing states because of the mobilization and organizing of people of color. And that's what's possible. That's why funding those grassroots groups is so important and making sure that the right to vote is protected there. I feel pretty good about our electoral chances for many reasons. I'd much rather be on our team than theirs, but also because I think we're going to win. I'm not counting Biden is polling only a few points better than Hillary was at this point 4 years ago. So we're not getting ahead of ourselves, but we're doing what needs to be done. We just need to keep it up for the next month. People have been asking me a good bit in the last few days, what happens if it's a tie? What happens if neither candidate gets to 270? That's been sort of a narrative in the news. What happens is it goes to the House of Representatives, which sounds great because we have a huge majority in the House of Representatives, except it's not one vote per representative. It's one vote per state. So right now, 26 states have delegations that are majority Republicans. 23 states have delegations that are majority Democrats, and one, Pennsylvania, is tied 9-9. We would like to have the majority of states have majority Democratic delegations in this scenario. So where do we go to flip them? Montana and Alaska each only have one member of the House of Representatives. They're both currently held by Republicans, and they're both competitive races. Elise Galvin in Alaska is running. I think she's polling a few points up. She looks great. Montana is Kathleen Williams. She ran for it last time. She came within spitting distance, and she's doing a really good job again this time. So that's also flippable. In Pennsylvania, we need to flip one. There's one incumbent there who's really vulnerable. And then there's two that we could grab there. And then in Florida, it's 14-13. And again, one really vulnerable incumbent and at least two opportunities for potential flips. So we could do this. And again, I have a slate, like I don't get anything out of it. If you use my slate, I'm happy to share it so you can see the races and learn more if that makes it easier for people. So if you're interested in protecting for this scenario, let me know. I'm happy to share that link. I think the odds of this happening are low, but I also would have thought the odds of a massive pandemic happening would be low. I would have thought the odds of Trump winning in the first place would be low. So let's cover all our bases in 2020. And then someone asked about ballot initiatives. I don't have a lot of research on ballot initiatives. I'm just going to put in a plug for Yes on 16. Congresswoman Barbara Lee, on a call with her last week, she referred to this ballot measure as her life's work. I believe there is no more important measure for racial and gender justice on the ballot right now. You should vote yes. It's basically restoring affirmative action to the state of California. They do have a funding gap on their campaign. Like all ballot measures, it's a little bit confusing to see what it'll do just from reading it. So if you want to help with the funding gap for the Yes on 16 campaign, you can let me know that too. Okay, where to give. I've gone over this. This is just me reiterating that I was born and raised in Pennsylvania. I feel a connection there. I am focused on flipping that state legislature. There's a political giving is the combination of what are you passionate about and what makes good evidence-based sense. There's also issue-based things like Sarah Gideon. If you want to get Susan Collins out because you care a lot about abortion and reproductive rights and justice, go for it. If you really care about climate change, Kyle Cunningham is your guy. And you can make these decisions at the intersection of that. So what's your priority? Winning a Senate, helping with redistricting, building a reflective democracy, hoping nobody else can hear my screaming baby through this door as I wrap up here. Apologies if you can. And then I find, some political donors will really just go for candidates completely or grassroots completely. I do an intersection of those. I think that's really important. And then there's the overlapping opportunities in trifecta states. So we've talked a lot about Georgia. Georgia comes up for the Senate. Georgia comes up for their state house. Georgia comes up for the Electoral College, right? So if you want to make an investment in Georgia, it's going to help in a lot of different ways. So looking for those overlapping opportunities, we call the trifecta states, where you can move three needles at once. That's good too. So I think that I'm done now. Yes, there's my email. Please do feel free to email me with any questions that you have. And then I have a quick newsletter. It's really low key, gretchen.substack.com, where I basically give all the information that I just try to get out as fast as possible and more of the reasoning and all of the links. Feel free to poke around. And if you have any questions, like I said, I truly do want to be helpful and useful to you. So do feel free to reach out to me.
Fantastic. I mean, seriously, and all the girl crush messages going on in chat are crazy. You seriously, thank you for giving us the gift of all of your discipline and hard work and care and commitment. We can tell how passionate and well-researched you are. You're just a gem. And boy, are we lucky to have you in our world.
Thank you.
I want everybody to hear this.
My last thing is that, and it didn't come up because I know we're going to hear a lot about She the People, but I truly believe that one of the best investments I made this cycle wasn't Amy Allison, wasn't She the People. She's outstanding. Now that I bombarded you with numbers and everything, you are about to just feel totally lifted up and inspired by her. She is amazing. I don't say no to Julie really ever, but I extra don't say no to sharing the stage with Aimee whenever I can. So thanks to you both.
Bravo. Oh, great. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Gretchen. I definitely learned a lot. And I'm Soroya Wright. For those that I don't know, I am a risk manager. I have a risk management and consulting practice. And as you can imagine, I'm pretty busy with COVID-19, social unjust, and just a number of things. Today, I'm really excited to have a chat with Aimee. And so, Aimee, you know what? I can do any justice introducing you. I just want you to say hello to everybody. You're just awesome.
First of all, hello. these are my people. These are my people right here. And Gretchen, you are such a badass. You just laid out in 26 minutes the whole plan. And Gretchen plays chess, not checkers. So what you got was the 30-day plan and the 30-year plan. That's what you just got. Excellent, excellent. I was so impressed. And thank you for your kind words about your support of She the People and really your support of me. And thank you for having me, Julie, Nicole, the whole team. Thank you so much.
Well, you know what? Let's just jump right in. I'm just so happy and thank you for being here. You know, we're less than a month away and we're pulled in so many different directions. How do we choose? You know, how do we get the most bang for our buck? And I bet that's probably a question that almost everybody's thinking about.
I want to just by show of hands or any way you can do this in Zoom. How many of you, whenever you look at Twitter or the news, have this gnawing feeling, this fear that votes won't be counted November 3rd?
Sure.
What is happening with the whole country is an overwhelming sense of fear, and we have good reason to be afraid. All the president's men and a few women have COVID. That doesn't seem to be stopping them somehow. Joint Chiefs are quarantining. So we're moving into the third month of no support for many, many, many people, working people in this country. Everyday people aren't able to pay rent or mortgage and are starting to be hungry. We have 30 million people out of work, the 210,000 people that have already died from COVID and millions of more infected. We haven't been able to live our lives. Scary times. And at the same time, we've also had time and time again, it's just not a new thing, but we've had Trump and the Republicans talking about vote by mail, instituting policies. They come off as like this bureaucratic that makes it difficult for regular people to not only vote, but have their votes counted. It is a scary time. What I want to say is no matter what, here's the thing, in the last 28 days, this moment is about getting out the vote. We always see GOTV, and for shorthand, get out the vote. Polls are not votes. And if you go back into 2016, this time in 2016, Clinton had a 15-point lead, according to national polls. Do not believe polls. The reason I started She the People from the very beginning was I said that we will not win back the White House unless we get out to vote the very people who are most likely to vote for Democrats. That's women of color, hands down. And you and I, a lot of us have been in this conversation for a while. We needed to disaggregate women and the women's movement by race in order to understand what the hell is going on and who's being ignored or who's being prevented from voting and who absolutely must lead the next version of our country for us to get out of the mess that we're in. That's women of color. So where we are right now is we must focus on turning the idea of the numbers, and Gretchen laid out a lot of the numbers. And I will just say for those of you who aren't familiar, She the People's predicated on a turnout in 7 key states, of which women of color in most of those are at least a quarter of the electorate. In Texas, 26%, Arizona, a quarter, more in Georgia and Florida. These are the swing states. They all have Senate races. They are all absolute majority or near majority people of color. We cannot win back the White House without that 270 Gretchen talked about, the Electoral College strategy. That's what She the People's been doing from jump. I said, focus on the most likely Democrats in the must-win swing states that we can activate people who are typically ignored by both parties. And that's what we're doing. So I want to say that we are in a battle. Just today, some of our friends in Texas had to file a suit because the Secretary of State there declared that in counties like Bexar County or Harris County, where there's millions and millions of people who live there, millions of voters, you can only have one drop-off location. These are huge counties. In places like in Florida, in Georgia, we're seeing consistently Republican Secretary of States or governors or state legislatures with a series of strategies to prevent people from voting early, voting by mail. You saw that Florida, the online registration site, it broke down an entire day before the deadline. And they had to go to court, our friends at Florida New Majority, in order to force them to extend the deadline for a day. It's like that. So, I think the answer is that right now we're in a pitched battle. This is not a persuasion thing. We don't need to win over Trumpy people. Okay. We don't have to do that, but we do have to reach the people who are likely to go out and vote, crawl through glass to vote despite everything that's going on, in order for us to get victory in the states that will deliver the Electoral College victory.
Thank you. And you mentioned getting out the vote in these various jurisdictions. And where do we prioritize? I mean, you listed some, but if we were to have our list and just say, hey, these are the ones that you would recommend that we really zone in, go all in, if we had to choose just a couple.
I mean, look, most of us here in California, and Prop 16, I agree with Gretchen, it's one of the most important racial and gender justice initiatives statewide. In California, it'll be women of color's turnout that determines whether Prop 16 is successful, because women of color are the majority of women in our state. And because we're in a blue state as it relates to the White House, there's something that we can do living in blue states. So for example, one of the things that She the People is organizing are text banks into a list of women of color voters in swing states. Listen, if you are a woman of color, Asian American in Georgia, Latina, and that's in Florida, Black woman in Texas, you may have been contacted, and about 40% of likely voters have been contacted. Do you know how huge that the number of women of color who are eligible to vote right now outpaces the margin by which Trump won those states that I mentioned? Those are the women we have to get. We have to talk to them before the deadlines, the voter registration deadlines, the vote by mail deadline, or make sure that they are on the voter roll and they have a strategy to go to vote. We can't look at the 3rd as being election day. We have to look at it as election season. And I would highly, highly recommend, if any of you are not engaged in these kind of turnout, get out the vote operations, that's where you put your time and your resources right now. We have to be able to scale. So what we're doing on Sunday, for example, and I want to invite you all to be part of that, is we have a list, and women of color have never been a priority until this election cycle. Let me just tell you, no one's ever really said, calculated or measured or did an explicit turnout the vote for women of color. She the People is the only national effort to do a coordinated campaign. And coordinated meaning I talked to the Biden campaign. I'm talking to groups on the ground who are running Get Out the Vote. We are coordinated. We're not doing independent expenditures. We are coordinated. And what that means is I can draw from blue states, California, and all the other states where people are like, what do we do to win the White House? On Sunday, we have 2 shifts. Right now, we have about 600 women from all over the country, a lot from California, who have registered. So in the chat, I'm hoping that you see the link. There's 2-hour blocks. You will only be texting. If you go, you can join remotely onto a Zoom, and you download a particular app, and then you only will be texting women of color in battleground states. Our goal is like each 2-hour block, you can reach 1,500 women through text. It is more effective than calling. The calling doesn't work. If anyone's tried to do that, it's very difficult to reach people. Texting reaches people. We are building a list, playing in the last 28 days of women of color we're going to move. And then we're going to use that same list. The first Black woman governor in Virginia. We're going to help flip the rest of the state houses in Mississippi and other places next year. We're building on that list. But what we need right now is as many of us as possible to actually do the specific outreach. We give you the scripts. We tell you how to respond to people. But if each person reaches 1,500 women of color who are the most valuable Democratic Party voters in the country, each person reaches 1,500. Right now we have 600. We have 2 shifts. I want you to think about exponentially how many people we can get activated to vote. And the voting needs to be sooner rather than later. In fact, if you put your ballot in the mail right now, they say give yourself 2 weeks. Well, we're freaking almost there. So imagine we have to be talking to people where there's not just in California, but actively there's voter suppression. We need to have them have a plan for themselves and their families. And that's what we're doing on Sunday. So that's a good example of it's not just, there's a lot of organizations doing things, writing postcards or doing calls or doing texting, but there is no explicit focus on the core of the Democratic Party vote, Black and brown women. And, we made the case. We started in Cuba. I said, I have this vision. And 3 years later, people are telling me, well, women of color are the most critical core of the Democratic Party vote. And I said, the reason you say that, with all due respect, is because we work like hell to make that common knowledge. Now is the time where the rubber hits the road. We have got to turn our people out. So our program allows us to scale. So if we get 1,000 people on Sunday, we have millions and millions of contact numbers to text across these very critical states.
That's great. And I will sign up.
Yes.
We encourage everybody.
Yes.
Encourage everybody. Now, we've been talking about, these next 28 days, but we should be prepared for a fight beyond the election. Let's talk about that. What are your thoughts and what should we prepare for?
I was telling Julie before we started, I got one of these vibration plates. There's something about explicitly standing on that that's relaxing me, because otherwise I feel like I can't get my footing because, Stephen Miller has COVID, or Trump is in the hospital. He's out of it. It's the chaos, which is intentional, is meant to distract us. Mm-hmm. So what is it that we should be focused on? I already told you how important turnout is. Forget about polling. Mm-hmm. Turnout. Now I'm going to tell you that the other thing we must focus on is we cannot be moved. Every vote must be counted. In states like Arizona, they anticipate it's going to take 2 weeks to calculate all the vote by mail ballots. In states like Georgia, we already know from Stacey Abrams' experience the levels of trickery that's at play, that Trump is going to want to declare victory on the 3rd. We cannot allow that to happen. The reason is because we have had a lot of pressure, MSNBC, Fox, or CNN, or they want this to be an event with the screen point to the, do you remember the 2016 where it was like, it's 10 at night, 11 at night, we're all watching it, and then they want to just project a winner. We cannot allow that to happen. And in our personal worlds, we can't allow that. And we have to set the expectation amongst all of us in our spheres of influence that the victor will not be declared on election day. I'll tell you why. The voter suppression is going to mean that there are significant fights. There already is every day, but significant legal fights, state by state. We're going to see irregularities that will be challenged in the courts. And I'm really glad NAACP Legal Defense Fund is one of the groups, because they're going to be ready. Fair fight is another. And then at the state level, we already saw our partners on the ground, like Florida New Majority and New Georgia Project, run by this fantastic woman, Insay Ufot. They have legal teams that are going to be challenging the electoral practices and how the election goes on. And so what the people is prepared to do is to push back. And we're working with a lot of women-led organizations, but a lot of organizations nationally, is the narrative cannot take hold. We cannot allow Trump to declare victory on election night. Do you remember when they declared Trump the victor in 2016 and most of our ballots in California had not been counted? Right now, it's not just California, but it's in those same states I'm telling you about, the battleground states. So for me, it's around figuring out a way to ground ourselves. If Trump does not, it's funny because when you have Biden, Joe Biden, he's trying to reassure people and say, look, he can say whatever he wants, but he'll be walked out if he doesn't win. The challenge will be, and it's for us individually and us as a nation, are we going to allow Trump to declare himself a victor, just like he declared himself sick of COVID in the hospital and then cured? I mean, what is going on? Are we going to allow that or not? If we say not, then we're going to have to make sure the organizations who are driving narrative and driving the legal fight are resourced and ready to go. We have to be warriors in this moment. And I feel like we're at that cusp where our country is going to go a different way. And I know a lot of friends who've immigrated from other countries who tell me what comes next, and it's not good. So that's where I see that we will not be done. I mean, we could see 4 weeks after Election Day where we're still fighting those fights.
Thank you. I know we're running short on time, so I want to give the group an opportunity to ask questions as well. Nicole, what's the best way to handle this?
Yeah, if you want to just take off your mic and ask a question. I know I saw one question come in asking, what can non-citizens do to help?
Text with us on Sunday. I honestly donate the resources you have and support the organizations that are highlighted here, because people who are non-citizens are still invested in the health, the safety, the solidity of America, the American government. We're all invested. And so we welcome. And in fact, if you can text in other languages, you could let us know, because we have the capacity, particularly in Spanish, texting into, Arizona, Texas, and Florida in particular. Because I'm going to do an event. I'm getting a distance texting thing on my deck. And it's just a small number of women, and several of them are able to text in Spanish. And that makes a difference too.
Hi, I'm Roxana Damas. I'm part of the group Alquimia Global. We're working to take reports to the UN Human Rights Council of what's going on at the border and across the country. But one of the things we are taking on is also about anything that's happening about voter suppression. So we're definitely hoping that we can partner with all of you to do that. And I just want to say that I have at least a team of 20, probably a little bit more, who are multilingual that work with us, and they'll be probably happy to support us this Sunday. We work on Sundays anyway. So I make myself available, and I gave you my email as well.
That's excellent. I failed to introduce Giovanna Alves-Silva, who is our team member here. You want to say hi? Giovanna's here with the She the People team, and she'll be able to also take notes and follow up.
Great. And I guess this is my question. Is there anything in specific that you've seen in some of these states, especially with the Spanish speakers, that you've learned so far about how we can support educate? Because I think there's a lot of groups around the country trying to figure out what to do. I haven't heard anything about texting like this, so it'd be really great to get them out there. But if there's anything that we should know as we get the word out to other languages as well.
Yeah, there's a lot we have yet to know, particularly about women and Latinas. But we do know that there is a gender gap between the men and the women in the community. And there's so much diversity. I don't even have to tell you. But what we do know is that our list does include people whose primary language is Spanish at home, but mostly people are speaking English that are on the voter rolls and planning to vote. I think when we talk about playing chess, not checkers, after this election season completes the cycle, I love to hear Gretchen say, here's plan A, plan B, plan C. We need to actually be committed to deeply understanding the electorate and reaching out to people who are eligible to vote, massive numbers of Latinas eligible to vote, and no one's ever talked to, especially people in the 18 to 25-year-old range. For me, that's where She the People's going, is to start doing that. That doesn't solve the problem that we have right now. I'd also say Voto Latino is doing a ton of really interesting and amazing work. And the Latino Community Foundation, that's actually Jacqueline, who's the executive director, lives right next door to me, and did an event with Julian Castro today, voter education. So there's a couple of tremendous organizations who are leading that I look to for leadership in terms of reaching out to the community.
I'll just comment, there's a lot of women of color-led grassroots organizing happening with Latino women, specifically in Arizona, Texas, and Florida. And they're doing really, really great work there. They've done, and Voto Latino has done a lot of message testing, particularly because not only can you not send next voters the same messages that you used for like white voters in Michigan and Iowa, but you can't send the same message to like Cuban immigrants in Florida that you send to like recent first generation Mexican immigrants in Texas or Arizona, for example. And so they've done a lot of message testing there, specifically around how to talk to these groups and make sure that they understand the ways in which their values are aligned with a vote for Biden, a vote for Mark Kelly, a vote for W. McCarcel Powell, like these Democratic candidates and candidates of color and similar backgrounds. So it's definitely happening there. And I'd be happy to put you in touch with any of those orgs or suggestions if that's helpful.
One last thing I will say is the beautiful thing about activating women of color to text women of color is that we're building the bridge because we are the bridge. And you don't have to translate in all the ways that if the typical political consultant white guy would not largely know how to talk to folks in the community. So that's a big goal for us in the next 28 days is to make that a reality, is to see women of color who are driving this. Now, having said that, our Sunday event is open to everybody because we got to reach the voters, and we'll be providing a script that is written in a way that makes sense for women of color.
And I added the link to, it should work, the chat box. Any other questions?
Well, there were quite a few, and one of them was from Sammy. Sammy, why don't you just ask a question directly?
Hi, I am 23 years old, and I'm part of the young progressives that feel completely abandoned by the Democratic Party and very disappointed that it's Joe Biden. However, I am still voting, but more of my conversations are with friends that are not voting because they just don't feel like the party represents them at all. The DNC messaging felt like it was more tailored to moderate sort of Republicans rather than women of color and progressives. So how do you feel about that? And when is valuing unity over like your true progressive values and what you want to see for the country? Like, where's that balance? Will it always be unity for the Democratic Party and rallying behind some candidates you don't believe in? Or do you have faith it'll change?
Do I have faith it'll change without your leadership? No. Two-party system has a lot of limitations. So I appreciate everything you're saying. I think in the primary, we had our favorites. Joe Biden wasn't my favorite, although I fought hard to have Kamala Harris on the ticket. I'm going to tell you that because it was significant and historic to have a woman of color who's leading a multiracial, like our California's multiracial, and she's bringing that skill and expertise on the national stage. I think that's very important. But the question you're asking is a bigger one, which is that, first of all, does the system serve people, and do I have to love the candidate in order to support them right now? And the answer is the system doesn't serve and engage people. It wasn't built for all women to participate. It wasn't built for Black people or women of color. So the challenge for us is to figure out the moment we're in and the role we want to play in history. Trump is unlike anyone in modern political history that's ever been president. I see how when they separate it as a policy, babies from their mother at the border. Do you remember the 18-year-old who killed the Black Lives Matter protesters? They're doing fundraisers for him and cheering on domestic terrorist white supremacists, where he's calling into question the very foundation of a democratic institution, voting, where they regularly lie. We're dealing with not just another candidate. We're dealing with a white supremacist fascist threat to our country. And I say that when I used to say that, and people were like, oh, aren't you kind of overstating? No, buddy. No, we all have the evidence now. So I'm voting for Biden and Harris. Are they 100% no? But I saw Joe Biden stand up today and acknowledge the humanity, basic humanity of Black men and women. Just the basic humanity. It's something that Trump wouldn't do. And I'm afraid for our collective future if Trump has another 4 years, because if we think we've seen the worst, we actually haven't. So I will just say that we need your leadership to help evolve a political system that includes a far more progressive, far-reaching justice initiatives and a bunch of bold, I supported AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and all of these amazing women of color who are speaking truth to power and have a moral clarity at a time that we don't see it a lot in this country. We need more of it. We need you. And we can't think, I'm 50. So it's like, it's got to be in your hands to lead us, collectively lead us into reimagining what politics can be. That's playing chess. But we have to get your vote in the next 28 days, or we may not have another election, not to overstate it, but actually think that could happen.
Well, thank you so much. I know we're running up against time. I just want to thank you again. I want to thank everyone for your questions, just giving us so much to think about. And we look forward to continuing this fight.
And I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for all you do. Thank you so much, Julie. Thank you, Soraya. I appreciate you all.
Thank you for leading the way, Amy. You said it first, and we are true believers, and we really rely on you and your wisdom and your voice and your direction. So thank you for sharing that with us so consistently. And I look forward to being able to donate a good chunk of money to She the People today. So I want to encourage everyone that if you would like to help us meet our goal of how much we want to contribute to these organizations, we can give more. And Nicole will put the link into the chat and look forward to be able to give. Jennifer, tell us what we should know from tonight.
Yeah, so first of all, I'm blown away by the analysis and the perspective. I think I come away from this going, there is nothing we can't do when we pull together. Like, there is nothing we can't do. However, and to echo what Amy was saying, this is my second ever vote in a presidential election. I became an American citizen to vote for Hillary. And I am damned if my vote is going to be taken away by a dictator in this election, because I firmly believe if he gets in again, he is not going out. We are going to have his spawn destroying this country for a long time. So I think we're voting for a lot more than just an election in this particular case. So my belief is just get out. We're getting out the vote on Sunday, people. We're doing as much as we possibly can. But I'm also I think it's important for us to recognize this is going to be a fight for 2 or 3 months after the election. This is not going to be over on the 3rd. So I think we need to figure out a way to support and help each other for the next 2 or 3 months, because I think the emotional toll is going to be hard on all of us. And particularly the people on the front lines, and particularly, Gretchen with the analysis and Amy with all the work she's doing. I think we're going to have to figure out a way to support each other. It's going to be a long fight, and I hope for the future of America that we win.
Well, dear friends, on that note, it just went so fast. I literally feel like my head's just like still spinning from all the beautiful information. But Gretchen and Amy and Soraya and Jennifer and Tamara and all of you, thank you for being such tremendous community members and caring so deeply. When we sent out this invite, somebody wrote me and they said, Nicole, how did they say it? She basically was like, I feel this organization's no longer aligned with my values. Isn't there a place for a conservative who doesn't believe in handouts? And I said, I think you need to find another organization. So while we are not politically anything as a nonprofit, we are living our values here. And I just love being with all you badass, brilliant women and couple good men. Thank you for leading and trying to make Sammy proud. We didn't do what we wanted to do by 53, but we did our best. We're going to keep cheering you guys on and trying to support you guys and leading us into what's next as well. So,
Julie, thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening. We'll let you know how much we end up being able to donate when it's all said and done. But thank you all for being committed to making it a better country. So
keep working. You have so much to do. Keep working. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, visit mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and help us to spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.